thank you so much for joining us. This is an incredible panel discussion with some of the best from the Space Camp Alumni Group. I want to welcome you all to meet these phenomenal ladies. Please welcome Liz and Andrea and Kayla. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this conversation.
Hi.
So as we're getting back, this is the year that children and students from everywhere were able to come back to Space Camp. When did all of you first attend Space Camp? Liz, let's start with you.
I think the first time I was at Space Camp, I went 3 times actually, Space Academy Level 1 and Space Academy Level 2. And I think the first year I went was 1988, maybe 1987. But I don't remember the year exactly, but I remember the experience being absolutely amazing. I felt like I found my tribe. It was finding people that were like me. My friends back home were not so much into space. I was a little bit different in that way. And I already knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an astronaut and I wanted to go study human health in space. But I just didn't have any friends that had similar interests. And when I went to Space Camp, I was just so happy to find like-minded people, and I found my tribe. It was a wonderful feeling.
Andrea, thank you, Liz. Me too. I felt the same way, and I was so sad when it was time to leave Space Camp because I thought, these folks don't exist in the Midwest. They just don't, or else I haven't found them yet, right? Andrea, how about you?
Beth, I also grew up in the Midwest in northern Minnesota, and we weren't talking a lot about Space Camp up there. So I didn't even know the programs existed until I got to college, which is so sad for me. But it was lucky that I grew an interest in space given some of the classes that were available on my campus, and found friends. Anywhere you go, it's good to find like-minded friends who had that experience and were now counselors at Space Camp. Yeah. So my first experience at Space Camp was as a counselor working with the Advanced Academy programs in 2000. And I went back in 2002, right before I started grad school. And it was because of Space Camp that I decided to change my career field from chemical engineering to aerospace engineering. So I too could study those effects on humans and physiology and support the human spaceflight program. So I credit Space Camp with my career passion.
Wow, that's so great. Now, see, this is my fault because from Chicago, I should have drove over to Minnesota and told you about Space Camp. But I didn't find out about it until 1990, and then I think I went in 91 or 92. So yeah, that just wasn't a really thing that we knew about here in the Midwest. How about you, Kayla? When did you come into the Space Camp knowledge?
So I'm from a small town on the eastern side of Washington State called Spokane. And again, aerospace, what's that? I mean, we have Boeing all the way on the other side in Seattle, but I was the Star Trek kid from like 3 years old. It was all about Kirk and Picard. And yes, and during the 30th anniversary special of Star Trek, which the 55th aired last night, during the 30th, LeVar Burton did a thing from Space Camp. And that's how I was like, wait, Space Camp? And right then and there, I Googled, or I guess meta-crawled the Space Camp website on, the original internet back in the day. And I found out about it, and I spent 3 years mowing lawns and washing cars and doing everything I could. And at 14, I went to the Advanced Space Academy in 99. And that was my chance to go to the Space Academy. And like Liz said, you meet your tribe. I found kids my age who could quote Star Trek. I didn't know anybody else who loved Janeway and all these characters like I did. So it was absolutely magical for me in that sense. And I already knew I wanted to be in the space field, and it just kind of kept propelling me that way. Like, yeah.
Oh, that's so great. See, now Kayla, this is the interesting dynamic because you're old enough to know Star Trek references, but young enough to have applied to Space Camp on a computer and an internet. Which some of
Windows
us,
95. So I mean, we're still talking old school there.
some of us were mailed a brochure in the mail and had to fill that out and send it back, but I won't say who.
I think we did it by phone actually when I ended up registering, and because mom's super worried about sending her 14-year-old daughter across the U.S. by herself. My mom didn't come with me. It was my first flight by myself. I mean, it was just this whole big moment in my life, and
Wow.
absolutely spectacular. And
It really is. It really was. So for some of us, there was a moment where either we arrived at space camp and we walked through the door and we just knew it, or maybe it was on your mission, or maybe it was post mission. Was there a moment, I'd love to go back to Liz and then Andrea, that you knew that you would end up in this industry when you were at space camp, or did it happen after, during? Can you walk us through when perhaps that moment happened for you?
I think I knew that I was going to be working in this field even before I went to space camp. But I do remember a really validating moment at space camp. I was working in the space lab. So like the lab in the payload bay of the space shuttle. This was before we had an international space station. And so even at space camp, we didn't have an international space station. And I was doing some scientific observations of, I believe we were growing little salt crystals or some kind of crystals. And I was making observations, per what I was supposed to be doing. And the space camp counselor who was monitoring, this was during one of the sims, one of the mission sims, and the space camp counselor who was monitoring the activities and giving feedback, gave me feedback after reading my observations and saying something to the effect of, wow, these are really good observations. You should think about being a scientist. And while I already knew that that's what I wanted to do, it was really validating to hear someone who I associated with the space program give me that feedback. So it was just a motivating aspect. It was an experience that kept me on the course. It was validating. And so I took that and I was like, oh, I actually can do this. I can do this.
That's phenomenal. And especially from the counselors. I mean, just in a passing moment, what a huge event. That's great. Oh my goodness. How about for you, Andrea?
Oh, I can't remember a time after I first saw the Saturn V come into view when I first came into Huntsville that I didn't know that I was going to be involved with that giant rocket somehow. So it's such a powerful arrival just to land at space camp. But so going as a counselor, the counselors go through an intense training period. You have to pass tests before they let you actually take a team and lead them, a team of trainees, and lead them through the week. And so it was a matter of learning the history of the space program, of rocketry, of, learning how to teach orbital mechanics, and then eventually teach the physiological adaptations that the humans go through when you live and work in space. It was that teaching component that first got me. And I'd always had an interest in teaching and STEM outreach. So that was the first grab. And similar to Liz's experience, when I was a counselor, we did have the space station module, and we were doing experiments in there. And I hadn't at that point in time had a lot of experience in the laboratory. And there were two experiments that stuck out of mind in my mind. One was cooking with chemistry. So there are two loves of mine, food and chemistry. and it really had to do with Ritz crackers, lemon juice, and a microwave, and observing what happened when you mix those things together and add some heat. And oh my gosh, now we're talking about thermodynamics. And it was connecting those everyday experiences, the practical application back to the science and the math and the engineering. And then being able to teach that to the trainees and watching them light up, just seeing what a huge impact the experience had on the kids, what an impact just their dream and passion for the space industry in general had on them, and hearing their stories was also very empowering. And so much so, it was a career field I had to follow.
Andrea, had you taught before space camp?
I had been a camp counselor previously and worked with the Society of Women Engineers programs and had done a lot of student outreach in education, but not formally or officially. So
Yeah. Oh, wow. So it really goes to show that a lot of the counselors that are there have that love, that deep love for space and sharing and educating and inspiring. That's phenomenal. Kayla, how about your moment? Do you remember it?
Gosh, I've been trying to go through it in my head. I was a lot like Liz. When I went, I knew that this was kind of the career path I was going to. I'd had a moment a few years before with a teacher that had just kind of taken that love of Star Trek and been like, hey, why don't you look at read this Carl Sagan book? How about you take a look at this telescope and took that energy into the show and threw it into NASA, and it all blossomed from there. And I remember being in, I think it was the space lab. I don't think we had the space station yet in '99, but I remember making the oobleck and just having fun with that. And I think for me, it would have been more that just that validating. I'm finding people who speak a language that I speak. I'm finding kids who speak things that I speak and have the same enthusiasm and passion. And having those counselors who would call out those moments, because I mean, I studied before I went to space camp. Like, I got every book from the library that talked about space camp. I went online and found like the acronyms, and like I studied. And so then having like the counselors be like, okay, Kayla's a Spock, she knows it all. Like, had Sheldon been a thing, I probably would have been named to Sheldon at that point. Like, because I was so prepared, and this was my week to enjoy it. And yeah, it was validating. Validating is a very good word to use.
Wow. Kayla, I think I had a roommate at space camp just like you who was studying. I'm like, wait, is there a test at the end? What's happening? Such great memories. I want to ask each of you, just jump right in, whoever's ready to go. Was there a moment that you were either scared, apprehensive, or that space camp gave you courage after your mission? For example, I did not I'd never scuba dived, or I've never been in the wet tank. So at space camp to do that, especially coming from the Midwest where you're going to do that, I was so scared. And just to have that one little experience was so big for me. And it just allowed me to say, I can do these things. I can do these big, scary things. Did you either have a moment at space camp that challenged you, or did you have something from a space camp core experience that you applied later in your career that helped you because you had to have that, that challenge during the mission?
I think the two moments that come to mind for me is the first one was, I don't even remember what we were doing. We were in one of the portable classrooms, and all of a sudden I got called up to do an algebra thing, and I hadn't been taught algebra yet. I was barely old enough to be in the Advanced Space Academy. I was 14, just turned it. And so all of a sudden, and I was the youngest of our group. And so all of a sudden I'm in front of these people who, I respected and I wanted to be respected, going, I have no clue what I'm doing right now. This isn't taught in my school to the same level that it is in maybe other schools. Mm-hmm. So I remember that embarrassment. And then of course that ended up hurting me later in college too, when they didn't offer calculus and all that stuff either. But the other time was I got put as my team lead for the Area 51. And again, I'm 14. I've never had a group of, especially older kids, some of these kids are 16, 17, and I'm in charge. And I remember just not knowing what to do and getting some criticism, good critiques in how to be a leader in that situation. And to this day, I do think about 2 or 3 of the lessons that the older students kind of taught me at the end of all of it, when they we were critiquing our team performance and they were critiquing my leadership. So that definitely was the big growing moment for me as little 14-year-old.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Wow. And who puts the 14-year-old in charge? I mean,
It was my turn. We're taking turns at everything, and it was my turn in my little section of my group to be in charge of this one part of Area 51.
and isn't that space camp? I mean, isn't that the mission that you're in a safe, protected space where you can fail and learn and be challenged and then move forward? How about you, Andrea or Liz? Was there something in either space camp or post experience that challenged you or perhaps surprised you?
I can think of a couple of things. First of all, for those who don't know, Space Camp is located in Huntsville, Alabama. Again, I'm from northern Minnesota, and I hadn't had a lot of experience traveling out of the state, and I certainly hadn't moved away from my family for that far, for that long, or my friends. More importantly, at this point, I think this was after I was a junior in college. I had a good group of friends back home, so it was really scary taking an out-of-state job and moving away for an entire summer, knowing that my friends were, working and playing together up and around campus. And I was going to have this unique experience that I, was going to be very isolated from them. So just taking that leap to take my first out-of-state job was huge and gave me the confidence to start asking, well, what else is there outside of the Minnesota state line? And I kept exploring after that. So that was a big one. And then coming in as a counselor, and you're naturally the leader, and just seeing, and even at that age, I think I was probably 19, but the first year, 19 or 20, the first year I was a counselor, just seeing the impact that words have on kids, and the way that your delivery of the message, and just listening and validating the team. And I know we've talked a lot about that particular word, but that doesn't always come naturally. It doesn't always come as as something that we're all taught, but that was something Space Camp did really well, is help us understand that we had a huge responsibility to provide a great experience to these kids that had worked so hard to get there from all corners of the globe. And I realized I just said corners of the globe. But and that that we need to be prepared and show up every day with as much energy and as much knowledge and background as we could to make that impact for them. And that was returned threefold in their thanks, in their excitement, and in the follow-up emails and letters, and watching all of those trainees go on to do incredible things.
True. Oh, so well said. Thank you for sharing from that perspective. How about you, Liz? How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you attended camp?
I guess I was in 7th grade, so maybe 12 or 13.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't really remember. But
That's awesome.
I was on the young side. But I don't remember having any moments of fear, but at all. But I certainly in follow-up years and understanding, there can be a lot of fear for kids that are away from home for the first time. And for anyone who's watching who may be worried about their son or daughter going off for the first time kind of far away from home, or if you're worried maybe that this might be a little bit of a scary experience, as Andrea was saying, the counselors are top notch, and they're accustomed to this kind of thing. And I remember, hearing about some kids who are homesick, and even maybe, crying a little bit because they were missing home. But as soon as they start to get into the program and get that positive feedback, and the peer situation is incredible. Everyone gets a chance to learn something new and try new things. And the counselors are so supportive. The entire environment is supportive. And the whole experience is new. Like, how often have you been on a 1/6 gravity chair or a multi-axis trainer? A lot of these experiences may be a little intimidating, but oh my gosh, that's the fun of the whole experience. And the entire environment is set up to foster learning and be supportive and build teams and build leaders and build the future generation of people like us. So if you're worried or if you're having second thoughts, Space Camp is just about the most wonderful experience away from home that you can have.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because there are. So now that we're alumni that have, let's say, matured, let's use that word. Uh, we have kids. A lot of our friends, neighbors, and colleagues have had children, and now they're looking to attend. And of course, things have improved and changed, and there's an ISS module there. There's so many other things since we've all been there, right? That are phenomenal things and wonderful training. And we've got now Aviation Academy that we had back then for some of us. And it just keeps growing and growing, and wonderful opportunities. And still, parents are parents, and we're asking, okay, how should these students go to camp? What camp is right for them? How's it going to work? And for those of us who have attended, we're blessed and lucky enough that when you find your tribe, right? You just feel safe. You feel like you can share, you can take your risks. And I think one of my biggest challenges was I didn't want to leave the space. I did not want to leave Space Camp, because that fear that did not exist. I knew I was going to go back to that in my hometown in the Chicago suburbs, where this kind of space group or science enthusiasts did not exist as far as I knew. But parents, do not worry. I think Space Camp is the safest, most rewarding. And I want to ask all of you this question. Whether you were a counselor like Andrea or a student, no matter what age you were, talk about a little, if you could, the transformation that either you witnessed or that you have had now as an attendee. So when I say transformation, please take this in any way you'd like to expand on it. Maybe you grew as a person, as a student. Perhaps you grew in the field of science. Maybe you transformed because you were with your tribe. Was there anything that transformed you in that moment or post, because it started at Space Camp?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just like bursting inside. So I'll start by saying, Space Camp was my springboard. It was, I'd always been a good student. I was doing well in my engineering program, and, was kind of excited to go work at a chemical plant. But I wasn't passionate about that. And I wasn't passionate about engineering really until I saw all the applications to the space industry. So that was a huge one early on. And I'll be the first to say I've had, just a career of my dreams. Every job is as great or more exciting than the one before. And I just am so grateful and fortunate for that. But I want to jump ahead to those later life experiences. And it was really when I was inducted to the Space Camp Hall of Fame in 2010, that kind of reconnected me with the center. I'd been really focused on school since I had last worked there. And that opportunity brought me back home to Space Camp and just re-energized my love for the program and for the people involved. And the people are key. And just opened up a lot of cool new opportunities to really give back to the community, to the organization, and to all of those involved. And so I had a chance to work with the Alumni Advancement Board and served on the board for, I think, 6 years, and 2 years of that as the chair, and just interacting with the fabulous people that have been on the board and are today has just been a true pleasure and a real treat. So that transformation of not only finding your tribe early, but staying connected and learning the importance of staying connected and just taking advantage of those opportunities to give back, because again, you're gonna get rewards in return far more than you put into it. So that's the real transformation for me, I think.
Wow. Yes, you certainly have. Thank you so much for giving back and serving on the board, and phenomenal. How about you, Kayla? Was there a moment for your transformation that you recall?
Um, I think for me, it would be kind of the momentum and motivation that came from it after the fact. I don't remember having a lot of fear. I mean, I got on the airplane and I just, goodbye, mom. See you in a week, 10 days, because I did like the extended or whatnot. But, anyways, it was like, I don't remember having any trepidation of that. But when I got back, I was in ninth grade and I was the nerd being picked on and stuff. And so I had that little badge of honor inside of me of like, I did this. I know there's people out there. I know I can continue doing this. Just get past, these, farm town type individuals and let's go. And that motivation, that motivation really, I think, carried me through a lot of my high school, a lot of what I did post my adventure to space camp. And of course, once MySpace became a thing and Facebook became a thing as we got older, I've had these circular relationships with people who have come back in who all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, the two Australians from my week, all of a sudden I'm talking to them on Facebook,
Yeah.
20 years later and seeing their kids and all that stuff and staying connected. And right before COVID happened, like 3 or 4 weeks, one of the girls that went to space camp with me was coming through Texas. She stayed at my house. I gave her a tour of NASA and we Facebook stalked every single person on the list. I pulled out all of the names from our week. And, it's just been that connection with people that always just kept me going when I was having those moments of I'm alone. I don't know people in my community that are into this, or I knew plenty of adults from the astronomy group, but my age, it's like, they're out there. I just have to get past home, get to college. University of North Dakota, just got to say.
Shout out.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Kayla, I especially resonate with your story and I can't wait to get to Liz. But for me, I was like, just like you, my roommates one wanted to be a pilot, one wanted to be Air Force, one wanted to be microbiologist. And I thought, is that a thing? I didn't know that. And so just going to space camp allowed me to have the opportunities that opened that I didn't know. And I was asking them, I remember asking them at night when you're chit-chatting, what kind of classes do you take? What school do you go to? What's your school like? And so just knowing that there were other females who loved science, who loved space, or who wanted to be in the Air Force, or who wanted to be a pilot or a commander. That blew my mind because you just didn't know until I think you got to space camp. And then, like you said, like Liz said, and we'll go to you next, Liz, it's you find your tribe and it transforms you.
That is awesome. And I want to riff on what Kayla just said. After going to space camp, the friends that I had made there, I went and visited those people. Like, I remember, visiting a friend in Utah and in Minnesota, people that I had met at space camp and formed really wonderful bonds with, and went and visited them and learned about, their town and how they were growing up and what they were learning in school, and, learned about things that they were interested in as well, which were not, exactly similar to mine, but it kind of expanded my scope there. But there's another theme that I heard mentioned a couple of times here, and it sort of has to do with transformation, but it's a word that I think we've all been, or at least been introduced to during the pandemic, which is resilience. And we've all had experiences at one time or another where things did not go our way. And the way that we respond to things that don't go our way, that kind of is a measure of resilience, how quickly you're able to recover from a setback. And, to young people, to adults, anybody listening, we all experience that. And you might look at all of our careers here and say, well, they know exactly what they're doing. They didn't have any issues. they're successful, and I'm sure that was really easy for them. Well, not entirely true. I think we've all probably experienced a couple of, people that said no, or applying for a job and we didn't get the job that we wanted, or applied for a program or a scholarship or something and it didn't work out. But certainly something that we've all been introduced to during this pandemic is the idea of resilience and how well we're able to cope and recover from setbacks. And it takes some practice sometimes. I will admit that I'm still working on building some resilience skills. It's an opportunity to learn. And sometimes I'm more successful than others. But if you want to really transform yourself, it may be taking a look inward and seeing how do you do? How resilient are you? And that's something that I hear a lot at NASA. I hear a lot of people when they're doing their first job interviews, or they're looking to hire some people that are right out of school, or even in the astronaut program. Resilience is a really key factor these days. So look for opportunities to transform yourself to become a resilient person.
Such great advice. So good. Thank you. And this is tough stuff. You're right. I mean, who would have thought that Space Camp would ever shut down? Who would have thought that there would go, months and months where students couldn't come to an institution that was about learning and growing and experiencing and exploring? And this is the challenge. There's other challenges too. And Liz, you got us off started. I would love to expand on this. And if you'd like to take it from here, please do. Women and young girls who are either on the fence, perhaps in STEM, in the field, like they love science, but they don't know where their place might be in the space, or perhaps they're not sure they love science and they love the arts or dance or creative. What advice would you give, either from a Space Camp experience or your current incredible career that each of you have had, that would help guide them? You talked about resilience, and that's so wonderful. Is there anything else you really want to make sure we share to the women who are younger that might be listening and saying, this is really hard, I am trying. What can you tell me that maybe would help me along my path?
I will fully admit that math is not my strongest subject, and I struggled. But it didn't ever make me want to quit what I was pursuing. Just because something is hard doesn't mean it's not for you. And I really like science. Am I the best scientist in the world? Nope. And it's okay. If you enjoy,
you're a great scientist.
I was gonna thank you, Andrea.
So supportive. This is what I love about this network, right? Support. But just, if something is challenging, it is okay. It is okay to struggle with something, and please continue to pursue what you're interested in. Know that at NASA, we have artists, we have lawyers, we have policymakers, we have scientists, we have engineers, we have doctors. Staying in the STEM field keeps a lot of doors open to you, but you can pursue a career in aerospace, which is like the hottest thing going right now. So many different jobs. What if you like textiles? I'll tell you what, we need textiles, spacesuits, spacecrafts, whatever you like. Stay with it and pursue it. And just if something is a little too challenging for you, stick with it a little bit longer. It doesn't mean it's the end if something is too hard. It's just, sometimes there's a little bump and you have to struggle a little bit, but please stay. We need you. We need your expertise, and we need your creativity, and we need you to help us. So, to people that are struggling or not quite sure this is for them, space is for everyone. So come play with us.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yes, please.
Yeah, Liz, totally. I think she has my notes in front of her because I have a bullet that literally says, it's not just STEM at NASA. And I have almost everything she listed out, HR, PR, PAO, all of this stuff. So follow your passion. That's definitely the key. And, NASA loves throwing around that failure is not an option. And it's true when human lives are on the line. But in reality, failure can be an option. And just because you fail, that doesn't mean you don't have what it takes. It means, all right, I got to step back, evaluate, and find a new way through. Math was hard for me. I didn't have a very strong background of it in high school. And so when I got to college, I had to pretty much start all over. I failed Calc 1 twice, but I kept going. What ended up happening was I found a teacher who saw that I see things very visually. And she's like, okay, I see why you're having issues. And I just started spending a lot of time with her in office hours, and she would kind of teach it in a way that it started clicking. And, it just takes, if you're struggling, that's all it takes, asking people for help.
Yeah.
Yes, it sucks. You're going to have to spend more time in math lab. You're going to have to go and ask for tutors. You might have to pay more money for tutors and for solution books and stuff. But if it's your passion, go for it, because nothing can take passion away from you except yourself. Don't let failure ever stop. Don't let anyone tell you to stop. That is my story. I tell everyone, I failed math. I've been told no. I've done stupid things in my life, nothing outrageous, too bad, but every teenager has done something stupid that they have to, get egg on their face and learn a new thing in life. And none of that is going to stop you if you just follow that dream of yours. And if you're like, I wanted to be the astronaut, I was dead set on that. But in the process of wanting to be that astronaut, I discovered mission control. And I discovered Gene Kranz and the stories of the Apollo and the steely-eyed missilemen of the Apollo mission control. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, astronaut, what's that? What's that? Because I was following this one thing I thought I liked, all of a sudden this whole new world opened up and I was like, oh, this is magical. I want to be here. And that became my new focus. That became my thesis. And that's what I do in my life now. And so just follow what you want, and the doors will open up, and it is the most rewarding thing you can imagine to get to that dream of yours and to push through and to be resilient, to persevere, to have that curiosity, to name a few rovers.
Yes,
Well
Kayla.
done, lady.
Before we let Kayla off the hook, do you remember the name of that teacher?
Dr. Stewart, the one who changed. Oh yeah, I'm still Facebook friends with her, and we, when I'm in Nashville and visiting, I will see her. But yeah, Belmont University, Nashville, Tennessee. That was that teacher, and yeah, I think I failed Calc 1 worse the second time.
I love when we give the shout outs to the teachers, because they really have these momentous life changing moments with us. I mean, just congrats. I'm so glad that you have that name and a special place in your heart for her. And I failed statistics twice, if it's any consolation. Andrea, but the teachers, oh yes, they are our guides, our inspiration. And sometimes there are door openers, right? Or there are permission givers, or there are, inspiration sparkers. And I'm using really poor grammar here for a former PAO, but let's move on. Let's translate back into Andrea. How about you? What phenomenal advice would you give to these ladies who are either in the field or soon to be, or perhaps just outside of STEM?
Oh, now I have to say, Kayla has my notes on her desktop, and I love your message about passion, because that absolutely, you have to follow what you love, because when you get into a career, we're here for a long time, so please love what you do every day, wherever it leads you. But Beth, I want to go back to something you were talking about. It was sitting in the dorm rooms and talking to your teammates and hearing what their dreams and aspirations are, and thinking, I didn't even know that was a thing. And that was absolutely my experience. I grew up in a real small town. You know, my everyday influences they were important. They were teachers, they were farmers, there were people at the grocery store, you know, there were people that worked at the clinics and the hospitals. I wrote my 9th grade career report on wanting to be an accountant because that was the hottest thing I could identify in my community, because I didn't know at that time that there was a mission control, you know, that astronaut was a job you could have, that International Space Station exercise countermeasure scientist was a job you could have. And so for young students trying to figure out what the heck they want to do, all I can say is if you follow that passion, you're going to find it along the way. And it's going to be something you never could have Googled to start with, because, you know, new jobs are being created every day. And sometimes you can make them up as you go, which is really exciting to think about too. So if you love what you're doing, you're going to find a great fit. And I want to tug on some of those failures or setbacks. It's tough to know what passion should look like sometimes too. As I was studying engineering, I mean, it was so ingrained to me that, you know, an engineer designs stuff, or, you know, we have to do everything that has math in it, or it has to look like this or that. And so even after I had decided I wanted to explore the world of human spaceflight, I was thinking, well, as an aerospace engineer, I should work on satellites. For me, that was just something that seemed more tangible and was more, you know, what I had been exposed to. So I spent a whole summer working on Boeing satellite systems, working on little satellite parts. And it was horrible. And I wasn't good at it. It involved computer programming, which I still am not good at. And it was such an important experience for me to understand that it doesn't have to look like what you think it should. And that was huge. So I was proud of myself for trying. I struggled. I was not good at it. And I thought that was going to be a huge impact. I just needed to find a better fit. And I was so lucky to have great mentors and great teachers that helped me find that better fit. And so even when I got to grad school after that experience, I was, you know, one of the ways I helped fund my graduate education was I worked for the science squad, and we taught science in the inner city Denver school systems. And so that was still one of my passions, was teaching. And so I found a way to incorporate that into my studies. And so, like I said, hadn't ever done it formally. I did find a way to keep that a part of what kept me going and kept me excited about what I was doing. And then just to tie together a lot of the themes that are being discussed here, when I talk to students, I send them home with the 3C challenge. And it is to be curious, ask those hard questions, and know that you're not always going to find the answer you need right in the moment. To be courageous, to step out into the world, move to a new state, take a job you think you might not be good at, and see what you learn along the way. And then most importantly, be connected. You know, we need to network with each other. We need to encourage each other, and we need to pay it forward, because this is hard. And it's having an amazing community and being surrounded by amazing women like you three that keep it fun, keep it real, and keep us moving forward. So.
Oh, right back at you, Andrea. Oh, it's just so amazing to talk to all three of you. This is phenomenal. Why didn't we do this at JSC together? I'm constantly thinking, I wish we had some energy to share. I know. Okay. So this is a perfect way to wrap up. I can't believe how fast the time has gone here, because I love the space camp stories. This is so much fun. What do you see as the future of space exploration? And this is a great question for, you know, there's so many alumni perhaps who aren't in this field, but they're still connected, they're tied, they're reading the news, they're invested, they're advocates, they're enthusiasts. And please either feel free to be very specific, and which, by the way, the alumni love, right? We're all space geeks, so the more specific, the better. So if you're like, the future of exploration is going to be an OSAM, and I'm going to tell you what that acronym is, great, please go tell us. But if there's something that is definite that you see a trend in the future of space exploration at any level, please share with us what you think that is. And I think alumni everywhere's ears are eagerly listening, students and alumni alike. So who would like to go first?
We're about to see a big shift in space exploration, because all of a sudden, you know, with the private billionaire companies, you know, I never thought the next great space race would be white rich guys. But with them and with what China's been doing with their space program and stuff, space is getting busier. And I think it's going to get more attainable. I really do think it's becoming more and more obtainable with commercial flights, with commercial partners, with more international partners, with more countries like, was it Malta that just launched their first CubeSat from the ISS a few days ago? It's incredible how many countries can participate now. And it's becoming busier, more obtainable, the science, more people going up, and it will be reachable, just it's more obtainable. And Inspiration 4 is definitely going to show us a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm so excited too. Oh, Kayla, well, let's the four of us make an Inspiration 4.2.
Oh, yeah. All right, pinky swear.
Okay,
I'm down. I'm down.
Liz, what do you see as the future of space exploration?
Yeah, to echo what Kayla just said, and to go off in a slightly different direction, we are seeing, so when we think of astronauts, a lot of us tend to think of just like very, very healthy, perfect specimen people. The envelope is starting to open. And there are people who have already gone to space just in the past, couple of weeks, months here, and who are going to continue, who don't necessarily fit that mold. And people from different countries who don't necessarily have a space program, or the opportunities are starting to open. And people who don't necessarily fit the perfectly healthy mold, the door is starting to open. So more and more people are going to have the opportunity to go to space. And, if we think about that overview effect, the more people that have an opportunity to take a look at our planet from that altitude and see the fact that there aren't borders and that we are just on this tiny blue marble. And I think it's going to be really good, not just for us as a species, it's going to be good for our planet as a whole, because all of those people, there are going to be artists, there's going to be poets, there's going to be sculptors, there's going to be dancers, more and more people going to space. This is happening. It's happening now. It used to be like, oh yeah, one day. No, it is today. And this is going to have an impact on all of us, and it's going to be a really good impact. And we're going to take even better care of this planet and of each other. So I'm very, very optimistic that some really, really wonderful things are happening now.
Goosebumps, Liz. You're giving me goosebumps. Because it feels like we could possibly go. It feels like it's right around the corner.
We can go.
Oh my gosh, Andrea, can we get a ride? Do we have to go we have to get further south for you and I, right? To go.
Just
to
a
launch.
Little.
Okay,
yeah,
just a little.
But we can get there. That's the key. That's the important thing. It's just such an exciting time for human space flight. And like Kayla and Liz said, I mean, the time is now. The future is now. Everyday citizens are flying into space. And I'd say for someone who works at NASA, I get asked all the time, like, what do you think about what these commercial companies are doing? Are they stealing NASA's business? I'm like, no, we're working together. And I think I wish that could be promoted more, that we are working hand in hand with these commercial partners very intentionally so that they can develop the capabilities they need to, let's say, take over those everyday space exploration needs. Which, wouldn't that be a great thing if we had everyday exploration needs as an ordinary citizen, so that NASA and those technology driving countries can continue to focus on pushing the boundaries further. We are going to the moon, and in my mind, we're already on that trajectory. We are as good as boots on the moon right now. And so NASA can start, when we recruit the help of our commercial partners, we can focus on that next step to Mars and beyond, and keep doing what we do best. And that's explore, to try to understand our universe, how it impacts life on Earth, and how we can make it better. So Liz, I love what you said, where we can learn to love each other and learn to love our planet more. We can learn to love Mars more. It's gonna create just an amazing community of exploration, focused and centric people that will start to see the importance and stop questioning why we spend a fraction of a dollar traveling into space. So super exciting.
Well, if all of you have seen the Inspiration for a documentary on Netflix, Elon Musk gives a very good breakdown of what that 1% of, your dollar, 1% of our investments, and why that's so inspiring to take that 1% and do what we do and go explore. And then he also said, if we're just living to solve problems on Earth, that's a really boring existence. So I love that quote. I'm totally stealing it from Netflix. And so I can't believe we're at the top of the hour now and we have to start winding down. So I am going to thank each and every one of you. And I'm going to particularly just so honored to say that it's so wonderful that all of us have had that Space Camp experience. And for all of you as Space Camp alumni, and incredible alumni at that, I want to thank you for joining us today and continuing to inspire us. And I now want to move towards something totally off script, if we may.
Okay.
So now that we did the formalities, I just want to go into this total girl moment, and I'm totally going there because I've wanted to do this with some of the NASA's finest, and we've all worked at NASA and had this Space Camp. What did you think, and where were you when you saw Wally Funk fly?
Crying. Crying.
Oh, I actually stopped. I was leading an 8 o'clock a really early morning meeting, and I put them all on pause. I said, you guys, everyone needs to tune in. This Wally's going to space. Let's stop and watch. And yeah, just pure excitement for her opportunity and the showcase that it's possible. Dreams will come true.
What a wonderful message, right? She never gave up. She had a dream, never gave up, did her thing, just was like, I'm not going to give up on that. And it worked out. And I will say that we're doing pretty good on getting Space Camp Hall of Famers to space.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good to say.
Yes.
Doing pretty good on the numbers there. So Andrea, let's go. Let's go.
And not only Hall of Famers, like just, alumni in general, yes. A lot, even more that have been into space.
That's so true.
Yeah. 2 more are about to go. I think Chris Jared is an Aviation Challenge grad, and I think Chris is a Space Camp alumni.
See?
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes, well, I was crying as well.
Are Space Camp alumni as well, and I know they're vying for their seats to the moon.
Who's that?
Jaws and Farmer.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was a special moment because everyone who's ever worked at NASA or knows the Space Camp, a Space Camp grad knows the Mercury 13 and the women that came before us and the giant shoulders we stand upon, right? That paved the way for us to live our dreams and work in our industries. And so not only did Wally just to know that she was selected and then to see her fly, my favorite part was when she was like, when are we going again? I'm ready. Let's go. That energy. She has unlimited energy. Oh, ladies, this was phenomenal. I can't wait to do it again. I hope that we get to do it in person. I want to thank you for continually supporting and inspiring and encouraging the Space Camp alumni and the Space Camp program. It's because of this program that we've all had these moments that we've gotten to share today. So thank you to Space Camp. Thank you to each and every one of you. If any of you feel comfortable and you would like to share how maybe perhaps young women would like to get in touch with you, please do so now. Otherwise, thanks again for being part of this panel and for your time this evening.
So I can be found very easily on Twitter. It's ontomars_Kayla. It's ON2 and then MARS_KAYLA. That's my public account, so anyone can reach me on that.
Thank you, Kayla. Perfect. I'm on it right now. I'm writing it down.
That's awesome. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'd say anyone, and I love giving professional advice and advice to students or those early in their career or late in their career looking for a change. I've talked to a lot of people late in their career who are like, how can I get into the space industry? I'm like, well, let's chat. So Andrea Hanson, PhD is how you can find me on LinkedIn, and reach out to me there. And I'd love to talk with you.
Perfect.
And likewise, I am also on LinkedIn, Liz Warren, PhD, And yeah, like Andrea, I like to engage with people there, whether you're new, just starting in the field, looking for advice, or looking for a change.
Perfect. This was so much fun. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your time so much. I can't wait to see you in Huntsville, Alabama in the future. Thanks again, everyone who's tuned in, and let's space camp. Goodbye.
Welcome, everyone. This is Beth Mund, and it's my honor to host this panel of women in STEM. I have with me some pretty terrific women, and all of us, and each of us, started our adventures in STEM at Space Camp. So I want to go ahead and get right into it. We're going to introduce each one of us one by one. I would love to start with you, Gretchen. Can you tell us let's start with your Space Camp experience and what age you were when you attended and how much fun you had.
Yeah, that's the best part. I'm Gretchen Green. I first went to Space Camp in 1986, where I think the ratio was something around the numbers of 12 girls and 144 boys. So yeah, that was about right, I think, for that time period. So I did Space Camp, and that actually, of course, as we know, that was the year of the Challenger disaster that had happened earlier that year. And it was very much top of mind during that camp experience, both as an example of the fact that the world was opening up to people, who were not the typical path to go into space. It was just the beginning and so exciting, and yet a stark reminder of all the challenges that we still faced. 1988, I went to Academy Level 1. And then in 1991, I went to Academy Level 2. I then returned as a crew trainer in college, and then subsequently went to family camp around 2016 with my son.
That is so cool. We have a very similar path, attending and then counseling. And then I went back with my family. What was it like to see Space Camp through your son's experience?
It's always a mixed bag whenever you try to pass along those traditions that you love to your next generation, whether it's for me skiing at a certain ski resort and showing my son, oh, this is my favorite place to eat pizza. It's the same, and yet it's totally different. So this is a different era. I went in the shuttle era. Now we're in a totally different era. We are aspiring to go to other worlds, go to Mars and beyond. So I think the scope of our goals is different, even though we always had those goals throughout, the history of space exploration, knowing we were going to go farther. And so it's been wonderful to see him applying some of those skills he got from Space Camp, but with even a broader view of what science and math can encompass than what I think we had an appreciation for back in the mid-'80s.
So how old was he when he attended?
He was 8.
Oh, perfect. That's really great. Well, that's wonderful. That's what a special gift for a mom and a son to share that Space Camp experience. When we come back, I want you to tell us how you discovered Space Camp. Was it a brochure? Was it through the movie? I can't wait to talk to you about that. But first, I want to also introduce and start with Rebecca. Welcome to the panel, and please tell us when you first discovered and when you attended Space Camp.
Well, thank you. Really excited to be here with all these really fabulous women. So my name is Rebecca Turzone. Let's see, I was turned on to Space Camp back when I was in the 2nd grade. Which was a long time ago at this point. And I wanted to go, but my parents were like, no, sorry, that's really expensive. You need to save your money. And I think they had a concept in their head that this was a fleeting idea and it would go away. So that was their way of just delaying it, to be really honest. And I did exactly that. I saved my money. I babysat, I shoveled snow, I saved my money. The deal they made was that if I saved enough to go to Space Camp, they would pay for my airline ticket. So
Wow.
I did that. It took a long time, and I ended up going in 1989. And then I loved it so much, I went back in 1990 and 1991. So I did Space Academy 1, Space Academy 2, and Aviation Challenge. And a lot like Gretchen, although I didn't do the counselor part of it, I too brought my son and my niece back to family camp a number of years ago. And
Oh,
that was super fun, because for me, that was like 25-ish years between when I had gone and then to experience it with them. And, kind of to your question about what was it like sort of watching from his eyes, I'll reverse it a little bit. He got to see me sort of in my passion, right? I mean, he only sees me as mom. And it was like halfway through the weekend, he's like, Mom, seems like you're having like real fun and not just mom fun. This is literally what he said to me. And I said, well, I am. I mean, this is like, I'm in my element, So it was really fun for him to see that side of me, and maybe why I'm so passionate, because he probably doesn't see that every day when I'm homework and picking up his room. So
that's so great.
yeah,
That's so great.
For me, it just, Space Camp, it launched me. I always say that I think prior to going to Space Camp, I wasn't among my people. And I went to Space Camp and I figured out there was this whole world that were like me, and that I wasn't this freak. And so going back, I just had this air of confidence about, I'm really glad I'm passionate about this thing. And so I've just held tightly to that for all these years.
Oh, perfect. I love that. Also, mom's not cooking, mom's not cleaning, mom's in her
Exactly.
element, and mom's really smart. And
Although I will say, he fired me. So he was the mission control director.
oh,
And I think, Capcom in one of our missions. And I was like, with my phone, like recording him, because he was so cute with his little thing on and reading a script. He literally stops and he's like, excuse me. He's like, when you go to work, do you take pictures and recording of your boss? I was like, no, that's weird. He's like, then why would you do it here? And he said, you're fired.
busted.
Space Camp counselor is like, no, you can't actually fire her.
Oh.
It was super funny.
Oh, and again, what a gift. I love these stories because it really shows that there's a connection, and sometimes it's generational to this experience that's really for all ages, right? Oh my goodness, but we have to introduce Caroline. Welcome to the panel. When did you attend Space Camp and how did you learn about it?
Yeah, so I didn't attend Space Camp. Rebecca actually told me about it. So I've heard about it a couple times. It sounds so cool. But yeah, I did not attend. But man, I wish I had.
Not yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Not yet.
There you go. Yes, I would love to. I wish
Come
I
on
had a family
down.
to go back.
Yeah, it's not far. Come on down. If you did attend Space Camp, and now that you know a little bit about the program, what position on the mission crew would you enjoy? Like a mission specialist, a payload specialist, pilot commander? Any preferences?
Man, pilot commander sounds really cool. So maybe pilot commander, but
Yeah.
also payload specialist. I think that would align more with what I do now. So I don't know.
Well, let's continue and talk about how you got into the STEM field. Was it always through your classes at school, or was there something that opened the door for you that really showcased for you what's available in this industry?
Yeah. So I one of my sort of thoughts around, coming to this panel was about how, my access to STEM had impacted my career path, right? So I think, at least in my school district, I was sort of at the beginning of this big push for STEM. So I remember the first STEM day that we had in maybe middle school or high school, where it was basically career day, but everybody has a STEM career. And neither of my parents are really in STEM, so I didn't really have that exposure at home. So having a STEM day like that, where I got to go see people who were engineers, who I was like, you know what an engineer is, but you really don't know what an engineer is. And there are so many different types of engineers and scientists. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I love math, and science is cool. And I can do something with it. And that's awesome. I don't have to do the same job as my mom or the same job as my dad. I can do something different. And that was really awesome.
Perfect. So let's each of us, explain what we currently do briefly and introduce the audience and listeners to what our job is in the STEM field. Gretchen, would you mind going first?
Sure. I'm a radiologist, so I'm a physician. I have an MD and also a Master's of Medical Science degree. I went to Brown in the 8-year medical program, which was undergrad, then 4 years of medical school. I then did an internship in internal medicine, and then 5 years of radiology training, including a fellowship in women's imaging. So I always like to joke that Halloween is my favorite holiday because everybody gets to wear skeletons. And so it's the one day when I get to wear my skeleton costume and everyone can see what my insides look like instead of the other way around. So my job is to use all kinds of energy and different techniques, whether it's sound waves, magnetic resonance imaging, or x-rays, to see into people's bodies and then help other doctors understand what's wrong with them and how to help treat them. My specialty in particular is breast cancer. So
wow. Thank you for what you do. Earlier this year, I had the privilege to go on an analog mission to Poland, where right before I got to check in with my team, I had a few days and I went to Marie Curie's childhood home. So was she a hero of yours? And who are some other mentors that you really looked up to, maybe that invited you into the field?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't know about radiology. So when I was 2, I told my parents I was either going to be a doctor or an elevator operator. That was it. It was just a decision point, and it was all I ever.
Wait. You're so focused. You're 2 years old, and you've already know that it's either one of these. Was there something about buttons that was intriguing in the elevator?
Yeah, I think you get to make machinery work. People tell you what they want. You push some buttons. It does. You're asking it, and you go up and down, and you get people to their destinations.
Oh my gosh, you were so driven at two. Okay, so as you went through school, was there something specific that started to draw you into this field of study?
I just knew I was going to be a doctor, but I didn't know what kind really until I got to college. And then I started thinking I was going to go into emergency medicine. So I moved some electives around so I could better position for it. I worked as an EMT, really thought I knew what I was, really going for. I wanted to do some wilderness medicine, and it all fit part of my goals. And then I took radiology as an elective. And I remember doing this slide deck that you had to, the old fashioned slide carousels with cassette tapes. Okay. That's how old I am, folks.
Oh.
But, you would advance through the slides and the narration would say, and next we'll learn about x-rays. And I got bitten by the bug. I had no idea that we could use technology to see different tissues in the human body, all the physics and science that went behind it. I had no idea going into radiology that I would have to pass 3 separate boards exams, including the first one on radiation physics. Physics was a really hard course for me. I had to go to every extra office hour. I did every extra assignment. I just had to put the pedal to the metal to do well. And it was a good thing because later when I had to take those boards, then I knew I could just work really hard and push through it. Fortunately, I was successful with that. So it's just the field of study that has held my interest and has continually been fascinating to me as everything continues to change and get better over time. I think that's something we don't realize as we enter a field. We expect it to be what we think we know. But, all these STEM fields, a lot of them are characterized by growth and evolution. And that's actually part of the best example of why it keeps me motivated and learning, is that it's always getting better and more interesting.
So well said. Thank you. And, in the future in space exploration, we're going to need a lot of radiology studies so we can understand the effects it has on us as we go and the living things that we're going to be bringing when we go out and settle the new worlds. Let's go now, please. Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about your work and perhaps some folks along the way that influenced you or invited you into your STEM field?
Sure. So I work at Northrop Grumman. I always say Northrop Grumman, and Caroline, don't tell anybody this. It's my plan B. Plan A in my career, I wanted to be an astronaut. And so much like Gretchen, I wasn't 2, but I was in the 2nd grade when, I got bit by the space bug and I just fell in love with it. And that's what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, along the path, NASA changed their height requirements. And while you can't tell, I'm only 5 feet tall, but they increased it to 5'2", and it wasn't waverable. And so I took a step back from that dream. And at the time I had already, went into industry, and that was my way of both gaining additional education as well as experience on my road to what I thought was going to be NASA and being an astronaut. But it turns out, my STEM education gave me all these great choices that, well, plan A didn't work out. I have a great career at Northrop Grumman, and I've worked on everything. So I grew up as an engineer in the company, and I've worked on everything from some space things like Caroline, to some radars, to battle command kinds of things. I've done some cold fusion, superconducting electronics kinds of things.
Wow.
And now I'm the vice president of a business unit called Missile Products. And so it's a multi-billion-dollar business unit in which I build, rocket motors and propulsion solutions. I build fuses and warheads and a bunch of ammunition programs. So I really feel very proud of being able to lead that team, because that's all about providing, our nation's security and our warfighters and all of that. But, I've joked a lot in my career about, well, it's not really rocket science, right? And now I literally am doing rocket science career, so it's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah. So
very cool.
So, I just think, and it was for me, Space Camp, which really led to where I went to college, because my counselor at Space Camp said, oh, you got to go to Embry-Riddle. And I started studying Embry-Riddle, and that's where I went to college. And I got a degree in engineering, and I went on to get 2 master's degrees after that. But it gave me choices, right? So when plan A, which so often happens to us in careers and life, doesn't work out, I had choices for plan B, and I hope for plan C someday, I'll have other choices.
Right.
And your question about, mentors along the way, again, I'll kind of take the opposite. Maybe I've had different experiences, but I had some folks along the way that actually told me that I couldn't do it. And for me, that really fueled my fire. In particular, I had a calculus teacher in high school. I was doing very well in calculus, like getting an A in his class. And when he learned that I wanted to go on to be an engineer and an astronaut, he says, well, you realize that takes a lot of math. Almost as if I wasn't intelligent enough to do it. And I said, well, of course I know that. Like, I think I'm doing okay, right? And then actually I went in for my senior counseling meeting, with my senior class counselor, what are you going to do with your career? And I had it all mapped out exactly what I was going to do. He literally kind of pokes his nose over the desk and he says, well, have you ever considered being a flight attendant?
No.
And no, I have no issues with flight attendants. It's a great job. It's a great career, but it's not an astronaut.
Right. Such a thing to say.
I had nothing to say, right? I literally just said, I'm sorry, I don't think you understood anything I just said. But the good news is that fueled my fire. Like, I'm going to show these guys who think I can't do it, that I can do it. And that's what I did. And so, well, I've had a ton of people encourage me along the way and mentor me and guide me and all that. But it's in particular those 2 folks, because I often think if I would have been the person to back down, which I think so often can happen, especially to young people, where would I have ended up? Where would I be? I wouldn't be on this panel tonight with you all, So that's why I think I'm passionate now about young people and how much we need to encourage them and pull them. And even if they struggled in math, who cares?
Especially.
So many things to do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, that's my story.
Wonderful. And just to revisit your A plan and maybe Gretchen's as well, and perhaps maybe even mine, and I can't speak for Caroline yet, but Dr. Cyan Proctor is twice rejected by NASA and in her 50s going to space. So maybe an A plan is still very much on the docket.
And look at
us.
Especially
those of us who went, right? Especially those of us who went to space camp, who we can say, we've already done that. We're totally qualified.
Now, I will say that my business has been doing a little bit of business with Blue Origin. And so I recently told my contracts team, if you could just write it into the contract, if we're going to take some work from them, that I get a free ride to space. I said, I'm on board.
Right. There's plan A again. It keeps appearing. It's still there. Oh, that's wonderful. All right. Caroline, you had something that perhaps we did not, which was the STEM day at school. I never had that. Was that part of your journey that opened the door that got you started in your career? And tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a systems engineer at Northrop Grumman, and I work for their space sector. So I'm focused entirely on the space side of things. I'm actually in the payload and ground systems, and generally more in the payload side of things. So I would say that the STEM day definitely helped. I think it just gave me that access and exposure to it that I really wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But I mean, I've always loved school. I'm like a huge math nerd. So I think I really got interested in STEM and actually doing STEM as a career when I took AP Calculus in high school. And thankfully, opposite of Rebecca, I had a really stellar math teacher in high school who was just really encouraging. And he was just really good at making math, tangible. Like finally, it felt like I just could grasp it. And I like took it and ran. And I love math. I majored in college. My favorite part about math is all the theory stuff, which I think is what most people really hate, but I love to do a proof. There's nothing more exhilarating to me than like stepping up to a chalkboard and proving a theorem. I think it's so cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm a huge math geek. I never knew that I would do space stuff, that I would go into this field. It just sort of fell in my lap. I actually was interviewing for a different role at Northrop Grumman as a software engineer in a different sector. And they were like, well, we think you'd be a really good systems engineer because you have this math background. And really the way that I see my job is, at least a lot of times, systems engineers are sort of given an idea and you have to kind of take it and solve the problem and build something that can, reach a solution for that. Which is what I really love about math. You start with the theorem and you have all of these things in your head that can build to a solution and you make it and you write it down on paper and then it becomes a thing and it's so cool. And so, I was interviewing for another job. They said, hey, maybe you could do systems engineering. And I was between a modeling and simulation group and the space group. And they're like, do you want to do modeling and simulation or do you want to be in the space sector? And I was like, space, give me space. That's really cool. So I ended up there and I think it's awesome. I mean, again, I don't have any background in it. So I feel like I'm learning something new every day and it's really cool stuff.
That's why you're going to be a perfect payload specialist at Space Camp.
Yeah, exactly.
You're already there. You'll know. You'll re-teach us the manual for Space Camp. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. I want to ask next, what was a highlight in your entire STEM experience? Something in the field that really made you say, "This is incredible." Or really influenced you or made an impression with you. We talked a little bit, of course, Caroline, your math class and some of the things that drove us. But if there's something specific, the more specific, the better, so that kids and students and folks maybe coming into this field can really hold on to an example or a case study would be great. And then something that you would share with a student that is perhaps on the fence and is like, oh gosh, is STEM really for me? And maybe through your example, you can showcase for us that that's maybe the moment that it was, great for you or a moment where you really enjoyed being in this field. I would love to hear if anyone has their example ready, jump in.
Actually, I'll go again.
Go ahead.
So again, one of the projects that I worked on last year, it ended up launching from Wallops Island. And even though I didn't get to see the launch, which was very sad, I did in the months that it was basically we'd gone up on the Cygnus bus, which is a resupply mission to the International Space Station, and our payload wasn't doing anything up there. But when it came down to deorbit, as it was deorbiting, we got to do our mission. And so in January of 2021, earlier this year, I got to go to Dulles and sit in a mission control center. And, I'm sitting in this mission control room and there's big screens in front of me. And, you have this diagram of how you're orbiting and it's doing this cool wave up and down the Earth. And I was like, this is incredible. I just thought it was so cool. Like, it was so exciting that, a field that I never knew I would go into that, I didn't really even see. Certainly I saw it's like kind of applicable, but I was like, what can I do with math here? Something that was just sort of so new to me could be so applicable to what I loved. And it was just awesome. And I think that my piece of advice for a student who's sort of on the fence about it is that STEM generally, I mean, it's 4 topics, right? Like you've got science, technology, engineering, and math. That's a lot of stuff. There's so much within that. So if you find something in STEM that like, yeah, you're interested in it, but maybe you're a little on the fence, keep exploring, keep looking. It's such a broad field in each one of those areas that you'll find something if you keep looking, and if you're interested in it, and if you're technically, into it, if you like doing stuff and you like problem solving, just keep looking, and I'm sure that you'll find a place to land.
Yes, that's great. That's wonderful. And then, we've got to get you back to a launch so you can see it.
Yeah, right.
That's incredible. That's a great case study, a great memory. Gretchen, how about you?
The moment that I remember was lying on the floor when I was about to go to college, and I had the course catalog open in front of me. And I was lying on my stomach. I can remember vividly, like, lying there on the carpet in the living room and flipping through and saying, okay, what am I going to study? I have to pick my classes. What am I going to do? Like, I got to do the pre-med stuff. Okay. But what else do I get to do? And I read the course description for neuroscience, the number 1 introductory course for neuroscience. And I thought, this is just the coolest thing I've ever heard. There's chemistry, there's biology, there's human science, there's some psychology and thinking, and it wrapped everything up with a bow. And I remember feeling the same thing that I think you just saw in Caroline, was this excitement, this energy, and the enthusiasm for doing it. And I felt that and realized, okay, if I'm going to pick something, and this is going to be hard, I have to pick this and keep this fire as long as I can and work it to its completion. I also knew that it was a bachelor's of science degree. It was an SCB or BS. And that was important because, as Rebecca talked about, that was a requirement for becoming an astronaut. So I was thinking to myself, okay, I just have to keep checking the boxes for everything I can until I can get to the point where I can throw my hat in the ring, but I'm going to keep all my options open. And so if I had advice to students, keep as many options open as you can, keep as broad a mind as you can, looking at what else might be interesting. Is there a different angle, different field? What's a different situation or a topic that I might get interested in if I try it out? And don't foreclose too early, because it is very broad. There's a lot of different ways to do things. So
that's great.
Yeah, harnessing that energy and that enthusiasm, and yet having both the short, medium, and long-term goals is what will help you keep going when the going gets tough. And I think a lot of the time our brain is telling us, oh, I should quit. Like, this is too hard. I'm going to give up. I don't know if I can do it. I'm afraid I'm just not going to keep going, because what if I fail? But that's the very thing that you should do the most. The thing that you see is very hard, that means it's worth working for. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't mean a lot as an accomplishment for you or for the world. And so don't be afraid to reach for those really tall goals, those brass rings, and really look for the things that are hard and that challenge you, because that's what will help actually pull you through those tough learning experiences and keep going.
Wow. I love that. I can totally picture you sitting on the floor and finding that description, and then your face just lit up just talking about it, because it must have been not only a great class, but something that, started the whole journey for you. And thank goodness you were at a school that offered that. And some students, they don't always know where to start. So they just kind of start where the general classes are required. And some students take big, brave moves and find the hard thing in the catalog, like you did, and said, let's try it. Let's jump in and go. That's fantastic. Okay. Wow. So Rebecca, what are some of the things that you have really showcased in your STEM career that maybe had your moment that you want to share with some students that might be on the fence?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I went through this engineering program in college, and it's hard, kind of to Gretchen's point. It's hard. I had many moments along the way where I'm like, I can't do it. I'm done. But I didn't, and I continued. But it was my senior year in college that actually at the time NASA was working to sort of reinvigorate, I'll say, their reputation, post Challenger, post Columbia, right? Some things going on. And So they put out this basically request for proposal almost to college students, and you could build an experiment and then bring that experiment to Texas and fly on their Vomit Comet, their trainer for microgravity. So a group of us from college, we got an experiment together and we submitted it, and we were selected to go. So we got to go to Ellington for the entire week, and it was like a week of, you know, being an astronaut, right? We got to go into the pressure chamber. We got all sorts of training and briefings, and it was fabulous. We got to, you know, get our experiments ready, and you had to go through the inspection and all that. And then we finally boarded the flights. And so for 2 days in a row, I got to fly. And if anybody has ever done it, it's about a 3.5 hour flight. You do 42 parabolas. And for each parabola, you're weightless, I'm going to say for about 20, 25 seconds at the top of the parabola. And it is so much fun. And for me personally, you know, it sealed the deal that, you know, I was on the edge anyway, because I felt like I really worked through college, and I was like, maybe I'm not really cut out for this, because I had to work really hard for it. But that sealed the deal, right? Because I could work with a group of people. I submitted a proposal. We did the experiment. We flew it. It was successful. And it was super fun along the way. And so for me, it was like all those elements sort of came to life for me. And so I had that moment. And then further in my career, I had a moment one time where I was actually teaching a class. I was an adjunct professor at a college, and a student of mine who happened to be in the Army was sharing a story about coming back from overseas and using a product that saved his life. Turns out the product that saved his life is the product that I worked on at work. And so it was like this connection. And I was like, I'm sorry, what product did you say?
Oh my gosh.
You know, and I had this moment where, you know, literally I was like, the student in my class is here because something I helped on to save his life. And it was in that moment that, you know, I'm now in plan B in my career, but I realized, at least for me, that passion around, you know, helping our nation's security, helping our warfighters. I have children now. I want to provide a safer place for them to live, and that I could be a part of that because of my technical background. And so for me, that sealed the deal on, while yes, I was sad I couldn't be an astronaut, I have made a meaningful and I hope impactful career regardless of that. And
Wow.
you know,
I have goosebumps just from your story. That's incredible. What an honor and gift to get that from your student. I mean, what are the odds?
It was just this aha moment, right? The fact that he was in my class, and anyways, it was fabulous. But,
oh my gosh, these are
you know,
great
to your
case
question
studies.
about what would you tell a student? And I think Gretchen really said it best about, you know, choices and perseverance and all those things. But, you know, the thing I would add to that is be you. I know it sounds kind of cliche or sometimes overused, but everybody has something to bring to the table. And what I bring is not what Gretchen brings, is not what Caroline brings, but it might require all three of us to get to the optimal solution for whatever we're working on. And the quicker you can just figure out what it is you're good at and stop trying to be good at the things that Caroline is good at and the things that Gretchen is good at, and just be you, the better you'll be and the better your team around you will be. And that comes sometimes with maturity, but, you know, comes sometimes with somebody just saying that it's okay to be you. And that means you may not be good at some things. You may even have some failures along the way, and how you pick yourself up in those moments and carry on will say a lot about you as a person. So that's my advice to young students.
Great advice. And a perfect segue into my next question. What are some things that you might see in your careers or in the career span that you've had that is in future trends of STEM? And please feel free to be very specific. So if in breast cancer radiation prevention is something, there's something new or upcoming or that you're working on, we'd love to hear more specific, the better, because there's going to be a lot of interested folks waiting to hear some more great examples. Or if there's just something in general that, and it can also be in space, it can be in pretty much any of these fields, that if you're even excited about that hasn't even yet been on the horizon, jump on in and share what you think is going to be something really incredible in the future of this particular STEM field.
Yeah, to start out with medical imaging, the sky's not even the limit. The technology tends to get faster, clearer, smaller, more portable, and therefore it expands our reach in imaging, within the body and also into the world and beyond. So for me, it's easy to say, yeah, it's a field that has these nonlinear exponential opportunities for growth and improvement. What I have seen personally that I never would have predicted, though, is the ways that education in my life has really changed. So last year during the pandemic, I also do medical legal consulting work where I help educate lawyers in medical malpractice cases about what happened in cases and how we might use technology and information and literature to help inform, was the right thing done, or should something different should something have been done differently, possibly for a different outcome. So kind of an errors analysis, or postmortem, if you would. And so I noticed there was a different intersection of need, that doctors, even in the midst of a pandemic, were being laid off from their jobs. I know this seems unbelievable, but 70% of doctors had either a pay cut or lost their jobs in many cases during the pandemic.
Wow.
And at the same time, many lawyers had time that they hadn't had before because courts were closed. So it was literally the perfect storm. The lawyers needed the doctors, but they were afraid to call because they thought we were all out saving everyone from COVID. And yet the doctors were looking for ways to expand their skills in education and also their financial ability to earn money outside of just purely clinical work. And so with this, I took the lead of a couple courses that I had taken through some digital portals. And I created a course to teach other physicians how to become expert witnesses and also do medical legal consulting. And so now, if you had asked me again a year ago, I would have said, no, that's crazy. A digital course, like, no, I'm a doctor and I do these things, I do technology. But this has opened up now a totally different world of ability to be an entrepreneur, business creation, education, new collaboration platforms, being able to interact with people on many different levels in the educational sphere in ways that we didn't do ever before is, I think, what will help us expand in the future in whatever field we apply it to. So if we can learn differently and better and collaborate in new ways, that's going to expand our abilities in ways that we can't even predict currently.
Wow. This is so interesting. I love this. I was just talking to my husband tonight about he's just starting to dabble into Bitcoin blockchain mining. And I was explaining to him that when I was also an adjunct professor, we were required by the school to teach three ways, to the visual learners, to the auditory learners, and then to the learners who prefer to read the material. But you had to present the information in all three different ways. And so it just made me think of STEAM, and STEM is really going to start to become science, technology, engineering, education, and mathematics. Because, I mean, what good is the advances and the innovations that we're making if we're not sharing and improving and paying it forward? That is fantastic. And who would have thought, they say that crisis brings opportunity. So who would have thought that these unlikely pairs would be able to really benefit from each other? Because I bet in so many medical malpractices, it's truly a mistake. And then, to be able to turn around and learn from it and grow, or to prevent that from happening, it needed a leader and a visionary like you to kind of step back and say, let's take a look at this. Let's share it with everyone. That's incredible. Wow. And hopefully, that's also what Space Camp in many ways can show students, that there is a place, a very safe place where you can fail and learn and enjoy that journey, and maybe even teach others. I mean, if you're really great at it, turn around and help the student next to you or the friend, or fire your mom when she's on the phone.
Exactly.
Anyone else want to share some of the trends that either they've seen or they would like to see in this field? Again, Gretchen, thank you. That's incredible and so specific. And I want to come to you for a course in the future that I want to take, because that's just, I would have never thought. And you definitely pointed out how that miscommunication or misinterpretation of what, we thought the doctors were doing and the lawyers that have time and both needing to be innovative. That's fantastic.
I
Anything on
can
the
share,
horizon?
I think several things, trends that I'm seeing are things I would like to see for sure. You know, one of the trends that I've seen in the workplace, and I love it, this is great, is it used to be sort of this traditional model of come into the industry, you know, be quiet, go to your queue, do your work, submit your work, and we'll come get you if we need you, right? And you're going to do that for so many years, and then you're going to maybe get promoted, and then you're going to do that and get promoted, right? And then it's like a long time in your career, way down the path, then you can be a leader and you can, right? That model has gone away. And I think this new model of, you know, our younger folks coming in direct from college, they very much have what I would call a seat at the table and a voice, and they participate and they contribute just as much, and in many cases more, than some of our very senior engineers or our very senior technical folks. And watching sort of that trend of, you know, almost reverse mentoring or reverse knowledge management or knowledge transfer is super fun watching, right? When you take a young person just out of college who has learned all sorts of new techniques and digital techniques and new tools, teach somebody who's been in the industry for a long time who hasn't had that exposure, that is really powerful. And so we're seeing that, that you don't have to wait 30 years into your career to be a key contributor, that you may have something really important and really relevant on day number one. So I think that's huge. I think number two, the industry is sort of doing a reset. You know, all of this space travel is very much back on the horizon, right? There was this whole period of time where it was on pause and the country didn't really know what to do with it. And in some cases, NASA didn't want to take ownership and there wasn't really the commercial side. But now you see all of that sort of rebooted. And I hope, and I think it's going to rejuvenate interest in STEM from our young people, because we need that, right? We have fallen behind compared to other countries and other nations, and we need young people to want to go into STEM. So I'm really encouraged by that and very hopeful that that trend will continue. And when I equate that to what I do every day at work, you know, we have enemies in foreign countries who have put this kind of, you know, horsepower behind STEM for many years and decades where we haven't. We have a lot of making up to do in that regard to really go continue to keep our nation and our warfighters safe. So we need people in these fields for a very long time.
So this recurring theme of education and enabling. I mean, I want to see more superhero women in the films and in the arts, and more women who, like Caroline, are just beaming and loving and enjoying their math journey. And let's be honest, there's not a lot of women in the field that that when you were perhaps going through school, you could point to and say, look at this mathematician, female, Nobel Prize. And they did exist, but there were just a few and the names aren't widely known. So now that we have Caroline, she can tell us some other trends. So we've got education for sure as one of the great trends. What do you see, or what do you hope to see?
Yeah, and I'll say Rebecca's first point, you know, the table, and I think it's really cool. I'm really jazzed, but I love going to work every day because I feel like I'm doing something and I'm making a difference. And I hope that would be a motivator for students who are in STEM now to know that that's a possibility. It really does feel like a different sort of environment than I guess what I was expecting. So that's awesome. And I agree with you, Rebecca. But I would say that sort of touching on the space side of things, something that people keep repeating to me at work who have been in the industry for a long time is that space really is kind of changing. I mean, it's gone from being this very traditional, very difficult and just long and expensive process of getting things into space and launching something. It's, you know, basically we've slimmed down what is traditionally a 10 to 15 year process or longer into maybe a few years, and it's much less expensive. So there's just a lot of stuff going into space, and it's getting smaller and faster and more powerful, and it's cool. And it's like, we're really at a turning point. And I think it's such an interesting field to be in right now, because it sort of feels like you're at this beginning of a new frontier, and space is the final frontier, but man, it goes on forever. So like, it really is like the frontier. So I think it's super cool.
Yeah, that's great. I think, yes, while space is a final frontier, human beings and living things in space is a whole nother challenge. It's like there's planetary exploration and so many things that, we're looking forward to doing and we can do now with our robotics and going, like you said, faster and further. And my goodness gracious, please get James Webb Space Telescope up there like yesterday. Oh my word. If I hear one more delay, I think I'm going to run out into the street, into traffic, because right? We have all these incredible things. And I know that space is also hard and it's risky. But I think there's a place, as each of one of you have said, for everyone in this field. In the field of space exploration, there's many things that are needed and there's many talents that are needed. So this is fantastic. And as we wrap it up, if you have anything else that you'd like to share, either about your personal experience in STEM or something that you want to engage or invite, or even if you're as bold as you want to share your contact information, or maybe how people can get a hold of you and ask some more questions about your journey specifically, please feel free, if you feel comfortable, to share. Otherwise, closing thoughts for students and interested folks that are looking to get back into this field or perhaps get started in STEM.
I'm happy to jump in. First of all, Beth, thank you for hosting. Thank you to Gretchen and Caroline. I mean, you both are fabulous women to be on a panel and a discussion. And my contact information, happy to take questions. I get a lot of students reaching out, asking about college and courses and things like that. So my email is rebecca.torzone, just like my name, at ngc.com, like Northrop Grumman Corporation.com. So happy to field those questions. I think final, parting thoughts is, everybody has something to contribute. And, these are only 3 examples, but there are thousands of examples every day. And we don't know what we don't know about STEM, right? STEM is all about discovery and innovation and invention. So we don't know what's it going to look like in 10 years from now, and 20 years from now, when you think about where people could be living in the universe and not just on this earth. It's pretty exciting. And so we need you. Get educated.
Yes.
Come try it out is, the best advice I can give. But don't be afraid if you have a little bump in the road, get back on the horse.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rebecca. How about you, Caroline?
Yeah.
Closing thoughts?
I guess my closing thought would be sort of piggybacking on what Rebecca said, that like, this is just, it's a really cool field to get into. And I think that something that's important when we think about the future of STEM and of women in STEM is, from my personal experience, I think I probably did have a much different, entry into STEM than you might have in a different generation, where I actually feel like I was very supported, and I'm very grateful for that. And I have the utmost admiration and appreciation for all of you for paving that way for me and making it, a more open environment to the newer generation of women in STEM. And I think that it's important for us to remember that, different diverse backgrounds lead to different diverse ways of thinking, and new people and different people at the table when you're problem solving will only lead to more innovation. And so I think that as we consider the future of STEM, we want to make sure that it stays open. And I think bridging out and building pathways for others and other diverse groups of people to join the field, I think is really important. So I'm a huge advocate for people in STEM generally, but let's get some diversity in here. I think it'll be awesome.
Awesome. Yes, you are. We're so grateful that you came and joined us on this panel. And finally, Gretchen, your closing thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beth, and all the members of the panel tonight. This has been great. I want to point out something that I think private enterprise has done especially well, is they have been driven by answering the question, how can we do this? And that's very different from asking, can we do it? And so whenever you're faced with something, the question is not, can I do it? Am I able to? It's how. So that one word makes all the difference. And don't believe that something is impossible just because we don't know that it can happen yet. And to Rebecca's story before, that she's 5 foot and therefore did not meet the adjusted height requirement, I didn't either until in my 40s. I had had spine surgery from a herniated disc, and I was actually told, don't run. It's going to hurt your discs. You will cause further damage. It's against medical advice, don't run. Well, I just got so busy in life and I needed to stay fit and I wanted to get stronger and faster and all these things. And so I felt like, well, the only thing left is to go faster and exercise more. So I'm going to start running. So I took up running, and I'm in my early 40s, and I actually have now grown over an inch, and I now meet the NASA height requirement. So
I'm going running. I gotta go.
Right? So doctors told me, don't do it. And I ignored the people who said no. And I did it anyway for my own reasons. And lo and behold, it's happened. So amazing things can happen that you never think are possible. And so never think that that one thing is simply not going to happen. Ask instead, but what if it's better than my worst fear? What if something could happen that would just blow my mind and be the most amazing outcome that I could imagine, rather than being stuck down in the fear? So when people are telling you things and they're saying, oh, like Rebecca was told, there's a lot of math. I think early on, you need to put a filter on that. You think to yourself, are you talking about you or me? Because the majority of time, people are talking about themselves. They're worried about themselves. They're thinking about their own perspective, but they may be saying the word you. So it sounds as though they are talking about you. The people who will help you the most are those who will spur you on and motivate you, sometimes by telling you you can't do stuff. And the other ones who are maybe even more valuable are the ones who identify, as you had said, the things that make you, you. When someone can look at you and say, as I was told, you're not going to be an ER doctor. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, okay, tell me something that happens in this part of the small bowel. And I rattled off 13 different things that occur. They said, see, that's why you're not an ER doctor. The ER doctor thinks, what's going to kill you in the next 5 minutes that I need to deal with? The radiologist thinks about those 13 things, looks at the small bowel and understands what is the most likely and makes a list of things that are more or less likely. That's how you think. You don't think like the other person. And so people like that, who have that gift as teachers and mentors of identifying the things that really draw your strengths out, hold that very close and remember those things. Use the others to motivate you and fuel you. But again, don't write anything off, because the things we think are impossible, you'd be surprised. It's amazing.
Oh, that's phenomenal. I wrote that down. The how can I do it? And I'm even going to use that as a parent to my kids. Instead of asking, well, can you make the sports team or can you get a better grade? How can you work this problem through? And then you're putting the question back on them, the student, the child, the person, the medical, in person in training. How can you get there? Or for us, how can I get that seat on the next Inspiration 5 flight or whatever is coming up next, or Blue Origin or NASA? But clearly, okay, we have to run. We have to ask how.
I am going running. I'm taking it up, Gretchen. I used to be a runner, and I've never heard that before, but I'm going to try it. It better work.
Right?
Worked for me.
I love it. Well, this was just phenomenally fun. I know that there's so many great nuggets that each of us were going to take from it and apply or learn or challenge ourselves. And it was just a joy and an honor. You all each have just exquisite careers and incredibly distinguished and in very, very different fields of STEM, which is phenomenal. So if people have questions after this panel, you can certainly get a hold of us. You can call Space Camp and find out more, and we can get in touch with some of your questions. Or if you want to learn more about these different fields, radiology, math, space payloads, private sector, or space defense, this is kind of all the places where everything kind of starts to align is at Space Camp. There's always an alumni in the network that can either point you to that direction, help you answer a question, or point you to a resource where you can find out more. And so I want to invite you to do that. And of course, keep on asking the big questions. And if you are a woman who is going into the STEM field, we want to wish you the best of luck. You can do it. And all you have to do is ask how, right, Gretchen?
That's right.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time. And thank you again. Everyone, take care. Goodbye.